My dad called my career filthy and cut me out of the family fortune. Then asked me for $120,000 when my brother wrecked the family business. My dad once called my career disgusting, said it was beneath the family name, and then completely cut me off from the inheritance. Funny enough, not long after that, he came asking for $120,000 when my brother completely tanked the family business. Name's Ethan, by the way. Right now, I run a pet care chain out in New York. I'm 30, and honestly, it's a solid gig. The job pays well, it's stable, and I've carved out a life that makes sense to me. I've got a decent apartment, a reliable car, and a small but sunlit office space that lets me work late without anyone bothering me. To someone on the outside, it probably looks like I hit the jackpot. Like I've got this big, warm, supportive family cheering me on from the sidelines. But truth is, there's no family. Not anymore. Maybe there was, once. The family I walked away from exactly 1 year ago. I still remember standing in a packed living room full of relatives and saying out loud, "I don't think I belong here anymore." That wasn't an easy moment. Not by a long shot. Sometimes, when you're standing at that quiet intersection between sadness and numbness, you have to decide, do you keep walking the path you're on, or do you break the cycle? I'm not telling this story to get pity or defend my actions. I'm sharing it to remind myself that in order to live fully, really live, you have to be willing to walk away from things you thought you couldn't survive without. I left my family on Easter Sunday last year, and not once have I regretted it. After what felt like weeks of cold spring rain, the sun finally showed up, just enough to dry the sidewalks. I hit the road early that morning, heading out of Manhattan while folks were still in their Sunday best on their way to church. Quietly, in the back of my mind, I felt a strange sense of relief that, for once, our family would all be under the same roof again. I've always believed that being on time means arriving at least 15 minutes early, and that day was no exception. When I pulled up, the house was buzzing. Laughter echoed off the walls, conversations spilled out of every room. There were more people than I remembered from past holidays, some family members I hadn't seen in years, faces I sort of recognized, even if I couldn't place the names. Mom had mentioned earlier that Dad had something important to announce. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. She's always had a thing for chocolate mousse cake from this tiny bakery hidden in a Brooklyn alley, so I brought one and left it on the counter. Over the years, I'd made it a habit to show up with small gifts, a bottle of good red wine, a box of pastries, or her favorite flowers. None of it really closed the distance between us, but I hoped those little gestures might preserve a thread of connection. Maybe remind her I was still trying. About 20 minutes in, things were running as usual. Glasses clinking, the smell of grilled meat and baked potatoes drifting through the house, and the familiar small talk about real estate, investments, and whose kid got into which school. I sat quietly at the corner of the table, eating in silence. I didn't speak. I didn't feel like I had to. Then, about half an hour after everyone had settled in, Dad stood up. He raised his wine glass and spoke in that commanding voice he only used when something big was about to drop. "Everyone, quiet down, we've got an announcement." The whole place fell silent in an instant. Then he said it. "We've made a decision. Starting today, all family assets, including the company, the shares, and the properties, will be handed over to Logan." Just like that. The room froze. My pulse skipped a beat. But right on cue, the room erupted in loud, eager applause, like it had all been rehearsed. Then Mom spoke, practically glowing. She looked like she was living out some grand purpose. "Logan's been with the company for 5 years now, and he's the one who'll carry the legacy forward. He'll take it to the next level." I didn't move. I just stared at my glass of water like it had answers. The chill of the glass bit into my fingertips, but it was nothing compared to the tight, burning ache in my chest. The applause kept coming in waves, crashing against me like hammers. No one turned to me. No one asked what I thought. Nobody said, "What about Ethan?" I was physically present, sure, but to them, I'd already been written out of the script. I always knew they favored Logan, but I never imagined this. He's my younger brother, 2 years behind me. We were never joined at the hip growing up, but we got along. Never fought, not once. Growing up, fairness was the law of the land. Our parents made sure everything was split down the middle. 2 cakes on our birthdays. 2 bags of candy. 2 bikes, same model, just different colors. Even our punishments were doled out equally. If we both screwed up, we both paid the price. I still remember scrubbing the walls with Logan after we drew all over them. Mom made sure not a single pencil mark was left behind. No favoritism. At least, that's what I believed. Up until I turned 18. I was sitting in the living room one early September evening, and Dad found out I wanted to go into veterinary medicine. I'd done my research, picked a school, even got a partial scholarship. I just needed a little financial help to get started. I thought he might be curious. Maybe ask why, or offer a bit of advice. At the very least, a nod of encouragement. But instead, he sat there, arms folded tight, eyes cold like I just said something disgraceful. I'm not giving a single cent to support that path, he said flatly. If that's the road you're taking, you're on your own. That sentence shattered something in me. It was short. Brutal. Final. Back then, I couldn't understand how choosing a profession could feel like a betrayal. But over time, it became clear, my dreams didn't line up with theirs. And once that happened, I stopped being the pride of the family. That title quietly shifted to Logan. Everything started changing from that moment. Not through fights or arguments, just a slow, creeping distance. I pulled back. Grew quieter. Maybe that's the cost of stepping outside the box they built for you. Still, even as we drifted apart, I never abandoned them. I sent Mom flowers on Mother's Day. When Dad's air conditioner broke down in the middle of summer, I helped cover the cost. When the company hit rough patches, I showed up. I never kept track of the things I gave. Maybe that's why the betrayal cut so deep, because it came from the man I thought would always see me. My father. It was about a year ago when he called me late at night. His voice was shaky, like he'd debated dialing my number for a long time. I'll never forget what he said. The company was falling apart. A major deal had fallen through, and they needed $80,000 fast or it would all collapse. I suggested putting it in writing, something official that outlined my contributions. But he brushed it off. Told me something that felt like a promise. When your mother and I are gone, he said, you'll still have a share in the company. It's family, after all. That was all I needed to hear. I wired the money the next morning. His words, soft, almost hesitant, after a long pause in our call, were the only contract I ever got. When your mother and I are gone, you'll still have a share in the company. It's family business. I nodded when he said that word, family, like it still meant something. I actually believed him. Looking back now, I should have asked for a written agreement. Maybe even had it notarized. But hindsight's a sharp teacher. The truth is, some people only remember what family means when they need something from you. That Easter, when my father stood up and handed the family legacy to Logan, I didn't stay quiet like I had in the past. This time, I found my voice, and it came out clear, steady. What about me? I asked. My words cut through the room like a blade, wine glasses midair, frozen. Silence fell hard. A few heads turned, eyes blinking like they just realized I was standing there the whole time. I caught a few whispers from across the room. Yeah, wait. What about Ethan? Someone muttered. He's Logan's older brother, right? The room felt like it was filling with fog, thick, heavy tension settling in. That's when Mom stepped in, like she always did, trying to make something cruel sound gentle. Ethan, you already have your own career. You've got a house. A car. You're fine, she said, her tone soft, almost soothing. But Logan, she added, he has nothing. I looked her straight in the eyes. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't need to be loud. Each word landed like a rock tossed into still water. That career? I built it from the ground up. I left home at 18 and figured it all out on my own. I didn't take a single dollar from you or Dad. I got myself a scholarship. Worked through school. Saved every penny I could. Meanwhile, you paid for every bit of Logan's education. Covered all his bills. And now you're just handing everything over to him like I was never even here. I'm your son, too. Before anyone had a chance to speak, Logan jumped in, a smug grin curling across his face. Mom's right, he said, like he was explaining something obvious. You shouldn't be competing with me. I turned, eyes locked on him, and snapped. Shut your damn mouth. You don't even get to speak right now. The room froze again. Nobody moved. Then Dad slammed his hand on the table. The crack echoed, and when he spoke, his voice was sharp and cutting, each word like a slap. That's enough, Ethan. Logan followed the path we planned for him. You didn't. He looked straight at me, eyes cold and wild. If you hadn't chosen those filthy animals, this whole company would have been yours. I stood there stunned. What the hell are you saying? I shot back. You're insulting me now? I could feel my heart pounding. Do you even realize that it was those so-called filthy animals that earned me the $80,000 that saved your business? And if my job's that disgusting to you, then go ahead. Pay me back. Right now. As soon as I said that, he shot up from his chair, his face a deep, furious red. His eyes flared. I'm not giving you a damn cent, he screamed. I brought you into this world. I raised you. Fed you. Paid for your school. Do you have any idea how much I spent on you? And now you're out there cleaning up after dogs and cats? You're a disgrace. That last sentence? That was it for me. I stood there for nearly 30 seconds, trying to collect myself. When I finally spoke, I kept my voice as even as I could. If that's really how you see me, then we're done. You won't hear from me again. Don't come looking for me. I turned to leave but stopped just for a second. Not to apologize, just to say what needed to be said. Dad, I said, looking at him one last time, I never asked to be born. So don't throw your sacrifices at me like weapons. Don't use them to try and guilt me into living the life you wanted. And don't use them to justify forcing me to carry the weight of this family. Then I walked out. Head high. Never looked back. I was home before 9 that night. First thing I did was go to the bathroom and crank the shower to full blast. I stood under the water for nearly 20 minutes, letting it wash away the anger, the betrayal, the pain. It helped a little. I felt lighter after, like my mind had finally put down something heavy. But that empty quiet inside me, it stayed. I brewed myself a strong black coffee, needing something warm and bitter to anchor me. I sat down by the window and let the night settle. That's when my thoughts drifted back to when I was 18. When I packed up an old suitcase, threw in a few clothes, and left home with just the money I'd managed to save. I worked part-time just to keep the lights on. Every month was a struggle. My parents never once asked if I was okay. Never called. Never checked in. The first 2 years after graduation, I lived in a tiny studio apartment. Most months, I had to cut corners just to pay off my student loans. Then something unexpected happened in my 3rd year, on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I didn't have plans that day. No work shifts either. I just had this idea, kind of goofy, but it made me smile. What if I made a pet care video? So I did. I stacked up a few books and shoeboxes to prop up my phone. Sat down and talked like I was chatting with a buddy. When I finished, I uploaded it to Facebook and YouTube. Didn't expect anything. Just figured if someone saw it, cool. If not, no big deal. But within 2 days, that video exploded. It went viral, almost 3 million views in 48 hours. I kept refreshing the page, convinced there was a glitch. But when the comments started flooding in, the messages from strangers thanking me, asking for more, that's when I realized maybe I had something people needed. So I made another one. And another. At first, I just wanted to share what I knew. Teach something useful. Help people care better for their pets. A month later, I earned my first $2,000 from ads and sponsorships. I stared at the number on my screen for what felt like forever, shocked, nervous, unsure if I was dreaming. But it didn't stop there. 9 months in, I hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Within a year, I had over 2 million followers across all my platforms. Then pet care brands started calling. They wanted to partner with me. Sponsor videos. Send me products to try out. That's when I knew this wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a business. A real one. With the support of that online community, I opened my first pet care store. I called it Whisker and Paw. I wanted a name that reflected kindness, love, the things I always wished I'd received growing up. That first location? It did better than I ever expected. Maybe it was because the people who supported me from day one saw their trust turn into something real. Maybe they just believed in me. Within a few months, I had to bring on more help, extend our hours, and start scouting for a second location. The second store opened a year later. For years after launching, Whisker and Paw had grown to 7 locations across the city's boroughs. I had more than 30 employees, full-time and part-time, and a handful of them had been with me since the beginning. A few newer faces joined recently. But every single one of them? They're part of a family I built from scratch. I never brag about what I've built. Especially not to my parents or relatives. That wisdom came from someone I respected early on, an industry mentor who once said something that stuck with me. Never flaunt your success. Not even to your parents. At the time, I didn't get it. I thought, why not share your wins with the people closest to you? Shouldn't your family be the first to know? But the older I got, the more I understood. Jealousy, it's something everyone has. Some folks just carry more of it than others. I learned the hard way that when you share your success, you're not just opening up your heart, you're opening your wallet too. People start thinking you're a bank. You'll get asked to pitch in, share your ideas, help someone start something of their own, because we're family, right? And when you say no, that admiration they once had? It turns into resentment fast. So, I stopped talking. I went back home for holidays now and then, still brought pastries, maybe a nice bottle of wine, or a small thoughtful gift for Mom. But I never talked about money. Never mentioned my staff, new stores, or expansion plans. In their eyes, I was still just Ethan, the guy who watched other people's pets. And honestly, I preferred it that way. About 6 months after that Easter dinner, I cut contact completely. No calls, no texts, no visits. My parents, Richard and Linda Walker, didn't reach out either. Not a single check-in. Not even a, "How are you?" It was like I vanished, and they'd been planning it all along. But I wasn't upset. Those first few weeks without a "good morning" text from Mom felt like something had been lifted off my chest. I finally had my nights to myself. I could sit in peace, sip late-night coffee, and work without feeling tethered to a legacy I never asked for. For the first time in years, I could name what I was feeling: freedom. Then 6 months ago, something happened. I was pouring my second cup of coffee on a quiet Saturday morning when my phone rang. I looked down, and froze. Dad's name lit up the screen. I stood there in the kitchen, holding that coffee cup like it might shatter. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but I didn't press it. For a moment, I let myself believe, maybe he changed. Maybe they were calling to apologize. I don't know why I let that hope Indiana. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe they'd thought about what happened. A few more rings, and I picked up. His voice came through instantly. No hesitation, no small talk. "Ethan," he said, "the company's in serious trouble. Logan signed the wrong contract. We're facing $120,000 in damages." Then came the kicker. "Can you help us? For the family name, for the Walkers." Before I could stop myself, I said, "80,000 was more than enough, Dad. If you want my help, start by paying that back." Dead silence. I could tell from his breath he was either shocked or furious, or both. But I didn't care. I added before he could respond, And if the only thing you're worried about saving is the family name, let me remind you, that name never stood up for me. Then I hung up. I figured that would be the end of it. I'd made my stance clear. They'd leave me alone now. But I underestimated them. The next morning, just past 7 a.m., my doorbell went off like an alarm, loud, fast, relentless. No pause. No respect. It felt like someone was trying to break into my peace. I hesitated before opening the door. And there they were, Logan and my parents, standing on my doorstep like it was still their place. I didn't let them in. I stayed in the doorway, blocking it completely. This wasn't a family home anymore. It was mine. And they weren't invited. I said what needed to be said quietly but without flinching. If you came here for $120,000, turn around. I'm not giving you anything. Even though my voice was low, it echoed down the hallway. I meant every word. My mom stepped back, something tight in her face. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from something else. Stress. Guilt. Maybe plain old anger. Still, she spoke, her voice gentle but strained. Ethan, you run a whole chain of pet care stores. $120,000 isn't that much for you. I'm begging you. If you don't help, the company will go under. We'll lose everything. Then Logan stepped forward, just a bit. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I know I messed up, he said softly. I know I ruined everything. Please. Just this once. I didn't say a word. I let them speak. Let them plead. I stood there, holding the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping me from being pulled back into their chaos. When the silence stretched long enough, I finally replied, slow and clear. Leave. Now. Or I'm calling the police. Dad's face hardened on the spot. Mom opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. Louder this time, no room for confusion. I have nothing to do with any of you anymore. You made your choices. You played favorites. You stayed silent when it counted. I looked right at Logan. You too. If the company falls apart, that's not a tragedy. That's a consequence. And I am not responsible for saving you. Then I shut the door. No slamming. Just firm. Final. When they were gone, I sat back down with my now cold coffee. My mind wandered, but not to guilt or regret. It landed on one quiet question. How did they know I had 7 stores? I'd never told them. Never once brought it up in conversation. Even when I still showed up at holidays, I kept that part of my life to myself. They didn't follow me on social media. They didn't have LinkedIn. Then it hit me. YouTube. That was the one thing I couldn't hide. I still posted there. Short, calm videos about pet care. Nothing flashy. Just thoughtful, gentle content about the work I loved. About the animals I cared for. They must have seen a video, or someone showed them. The thought made my skin crawl. Not because they found out, but because I knew exactly what they were capable of when they saw an opportunity to take advantage of someone. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. I typed out a warning as direct as possible. If you, Mom, or Logan do anything that damages my business or my name, I will sue. I'm not bluffing. I hit send. Then hoped they'd take it seriously and back off. But Logan didn't. The very next day, he posted on Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram. I didn't even see it first. Friends sent me screenshots. Then my employees saw it. Even a few reporters reached out. I didn't need to read every word to understand what he wrote. The lies were loud enough from just the headlines. He claimed I turned my back on our family when they were on the edge of bankruptcy. That I refused to help. That I kicked them out like strangers. He even threw in some older, twisted details, said I'd always treated them poorly, that I disrespected my own blood. It didn't matter what was real. People don't want the truth. They want drama. They want to believe in villains with cold hearts and big wallets. They want tragic stories they can whisper about with wide eyes and pointed fingers. And just like that, I lost clients. A handful of appointments cancelled that very morning. Regulars stopped calling. All because Logan decided to play the victim and made me the monster. The company's social media accounts were flooded with hate. My inbox was stacked with angry messages, threats, and people swearing off my business forever. If I didn't act fast, there was a real risk I could lose everything I'd built. That same afternoon, I reached out to Derek, my friend and attorney. He was the one who helped me write the lease for my first shop. I didn't even bother calling. Just sent a one-line text. "I need to see you. It's urgent." Despite a packed schedule, Derek carved out a slot between 2 meetings. When I walked into his office, it was quiet, orderly, bathed in sunlight pouring through the massive window behind his desk. I laid it all out. Explained everything. Handed him printed screenshots of the hate comments, revenue loss charts, and the original post Logan had written, the one that started the whole mess. Derek listened with his fingers laced under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back, folded his arms, and gave me this strange little smile. "You just hit the jackpot, Ethan," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head toward me, still smiling. "I mean, you've got nothing to worry about. Everything Logan posted, the lies, the damage to your brand, the drop in revenue, that's the foundation for a very solid civil case. And with the proof you brought in, I can already tell you this is going to end with a payout bigger than your losses." A wave of relief ran through me. Derek wasn't just being hopeful, he was certain. "Logan's going to be held accountable," he continued, calm and steady. "Legally. Financially. And if the court rules like I think it will, you're getting back more than you lost." I didn't say much. Just nodded. Then I unzipped my backpack, pulled out the paperwork I'd spent the night preparing, and placed it on the desk. "Draft the case," I told him. "I'm giving you full authority to take it from here." He reached across the desk, not for a handshake of congratulations, but one of commitment. A beginning. That afternoon, I signed the power of attorney. There were no warning texts this time. No waiting to see if someone would change. No hesitation. I was suing. And for once, I felt no guilt about it. A few weeks after the papers were signed, Logan's lawyer finally reached out to Derek. They wanted to talk settlement. Of course they did. People like that only show up when the fire's already burned down the front door. They want peace only when they're out of options. Still, Derek called me into his office that Thursday. "They want to propose a deal," he said, holding up a file folder like it was just any other piece of business. I didn't say a word. He opened it and slid the top sheet across the desk to me. "They're looking to sell the company. But they want to stay on afterward, as internal advisors." I scanned the proposal from my seat. Technically, nothing was wrong with it. On paper, it even made sense. But I didn't care about technicals. I didn't want any part of that company. Not anymore. I looked Derek in the eye. My voice was even. Final. "Tell them I'm not interested." He gave me a slow nod. No pushback. No confusion. I stood up, reached for my coat, and paused at the door. "I'm not buying the company," I said. "I'm not hiring family. And I'm not rescuing a group of people just so they can treat me like their personal ATM again." 3 months after Logan's post went live, the trial began. The courthouse was just a short drive from my apartment in Manhattan. But that morning, I left early. I needed the stillness of the car. A few quiet minutes to breathe, collect my thoughts, and remind myself why I was doing this. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. When I stepped into the courtroom, I saw Logan sitting there with his attorney. He didn't look so smug anymore. Gone was the arrogance from Easter dinner, the taunting smirk. His eyes stayed down. Nervous. He looked like someone who finally realized he'd gone too far. Derek was ready. He walked the court through every loss, canceled appointments, terminated partnerships, revenue decline, employee wages. Every word was backed up by documents, timestamps, financial reports. No exaggeration. Just facts. Logan's legal team tried to paint his post as a personal expression. Said he never intended this kind of fallout. That people had misunderstood his words. But no one bought it. Not with nearly 30,000 shares and a targeted narrative that dragged my name through the dirt. I didn't look at Logan when the judge started reading the decision. I didn't need to. The defendant, Logan Walker, is found liable for substantial commercial damages, the judge said. He is ordered to pay the plaintiff, Ethan Walker, total compensation of $248,000. Silence. I stood up. Didn't glance at Logan. Didn't check if my parents were in the back. I didn't care if they heard or felt anything. I walked out of that courtroom like I was closing the final chapter of a story that never should have been written in the first place. And yes, I won. Not because I wanted to prove anything to them, but because I finally stopped letting people walk all over me. Later, I heard Logan had to sell the company, the so-called Walker legacy. He also had to give up his house to cover the damages. I didn't follow up. Didn't ask for confirmation. I didn't care. All I needed to know was that I gave them a chance. I warned them. They chose to ignore it. And they paid the price. The next 6 months? Peaceful. The kind of peace I used to imagine when I first moved out at 18. Then, 3 days ago, just like clockwork, it all came back. It was a Saturday morning. Early. Just after 7, the same time they came asking for $120,000 the first time. The sky was gray and cold. I opened the door and was stunned. My mother stood there. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her face drawn and pale. She clutched her bag strap like it was the only thing holding her together. She didn't speak at first. When she did, her voice was soft, cracked, barely there. "Your father, he's in the hospital," she said. "It's serious. The treatment, it's around $20,000. Then came the words I knew were coming. "I know I was wrong. But please. Just this once, help me." I didn't feel anger. No rage rose up. But I didn't feel pity either. There was just a hollow space in my chest. A space that had been carved out by years of silence, favoritism, and betrayal. I looked at her, really looked at her, and spoke so quietly it barely counted as speech. "To me," I whispered, "my parents died the day you both stood by and let Logan destroy my career, and said nothing." I paused. "And I don't give money to the dead." She froze. Lips trembling, eyes trying to hold something back. But there were no more words to say. I didn't cry. Neither did she. She just stood there like she had something else to say but couldn't form the words. And I shut the door. I didn't hesitate. I took a long, steady breath and said with all the calm in the world, "Ask your heir." Then I shut the door, slowly, not in anger, but with a kind of finality that said, "This door won't be opening again." Some of you might be thinking by now that I'm bitter. Cold. Maybe even heartless. If that's what's on your mind, I get it, but don't rush to judge me. Because here's the truth, that same afternoon, after my mom left, I went to the hospital. I didn't go to his room. I didn't stand outside the window like they do in movies. I called the front desk, gave his full name, and asked for a status update, just to see if she'd been telling the truth. She was. My father really had been admitted. His condition was serious, and the cost of treatment was almost exactly what she said, $20,000. I sat in my car with that knowledge. My wallet was next to me. I even took my credit card out. And then my mind dragged me back to Easter, 1 year before. I could still see their wine glasses raised, their smiling faces as they handed the family business to Logan in front of everyone, and expected me to quietly understand. The next morning, still dazed from the emotional mess of it all, I made a few calls. I checked with some real estate contacts I still had. Looked into the status of my parents' house. Turns out, they still owned it outright. No mortgage. No liens. No transfers. The deed was clean. Estimated value? Around $400,000. They could sell it. If they truly needed help, they had more than enough right there to cover the medical bills. So no, I didn't pay the hospital. Instead, I sent my mom a short message. You still have the house. Sell it to pay for Dad's treatment. She never responded. Maybe it was pride. Maybe that house was always meant to be Logan's inheritance, and the idea of letting it go felt like too much to bear. Maybe she just couldn't accept that I wouldn't come to their rescue again. But whatever her reasons, honestly, I don't care anymore. It's their decision whether they want to hold on to that house or let it go. I've made mine. I'm done. At this point, I expect nothing from them. That's not bitterness talking, it's just acceptance. Even after all of this, I still believe in the idea of family. I just know now that it's not always where you were born. Sometimes you build it yourself. I spent years trying to prove myself. Trying to earn love and appreciation that should have been there by default. But the truth is, some people only value what you do for them once you stop doing it. And that's why I'm telling this story. Not to make anyone angry. Not to get pity. But because I know someone out there is listening, someone who's living this same thing. You're expected to carry the weight. To forgive endlessly. To hold the family together. And just because you did well, everyone assumes you can take more. Give more. Be more. If that's you, I want to tell you something clearly. You're not awful for saying no. You're not selfish for finally setting a boundary. Kindness should never be a burden. And if love is one-sided, if you're the only one reaching out, sacrificing, trying to keep it alive, then maybe it's time to let go. Before I end this, I want to ask something of you, the people who stuck around and heard me out all the way to the end. Was I wrong to walk away from a family that only saw me as a fallback plan? Was it too much to say no to the same people who turned their backs on me when I needed them most? I honestly want to know. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy Reddit-style family drama like this, go ahead and hit subscribe, turn on those notifications, and stick around. There's always another story just around the corner.